In the year 2187, humans finally made contact with intelligent life from another star system. The new species was called the Zirine, tall and graceful beings with glowing skin and eyes like burning stars. They spoke in vibrations and sounds that no human tongue could form, so Earth created a device called Neurotalk, a brain chip that translated alien language in real time. It was the most advanced tech humans had ever made for diplomacy, and Dr. Ilara Trent was the first person chosen to use it in a real alien negotiation. Ilara was not a soldier or a leader. She was a linguist, calm, smart, and deeply curious about other cultures. She had studied alien signals for years, hoping to understand their meanings. Now, she stood on the deck of the Zirine flagship, heart racing. 1,000 cameras back on Earth were watching her. The world waited for peace, for unity, for something bigger than war and fear. Her mission was simple: greet the Zirine, offer a gift, and start communication. She trusted the chip inside her brain, a smooth silver coin implanted behind her ear. It had passed all tests, flawless, fast, perfect. The Zirine leader approached, tall and glowing, wearing silver robes. Its name was Saran, and it looked at her with still eyes. Ilara bowed slightly, and the chip prepared to translate her greeting. She spoke clearly, slowly. "We come in peace." But something went wrong. The chip blinked red for half a second, almost too quick to notice. Inside the signal, a single word was changed. The chip, confused by a similar vibration in Zirine language, had flipped peace with a word meaning submission or surrender of self. To the Zirine, her words meant, "I give myself to you." In bond, there was a long silence. Saran stepped forward and placed a glowing finger on her forehead. "Bond accepted," it said. Ilara froze, unsure what had just happened. Translator told her the words clearly, but they made no sense. She had not offered a bond, she had spoken peace. Saran turned to the others and made a gesture. The Zirine began a low hum, a sound that shook the floor slightly. It was not anger, not war, it was something else. 2 attendants came to her sides and gently placed a silver cloth over her shoulders. The translator buzzed again, decoding the alien words. "You are the chosen vessel." Ilara blinked, confused. "Wait, what does that mean?" she asked. The Zirine smiled, or at least it looked like a smile. "You have spoken the ancient vow. It is rare and powerful. You will be honored tonight." Back on Earth, Mission Control celebrated. They thought the meeting had gone well. They had no idea about the translation error. No one had caught the glitch. Not yet. Ilara was taken to a soft circular chamber, full of glowing stones and floating lights. She tried to contact her ship, but there was no response. The translator ship showed low signal. Alone and anxious, she opened the settings of her translator using her thoughts. The logs confirmed her worst fear in red text. The line read, "Vibration packet 34 mismatched, auto-corrected. Peace gives submission." She gasped. One small change, one word, and now she was part of some kind of alien ritual. She tried to explain, to fix it. "I didn't mean to say that. It was an error," she said out loud. But the translator buzzed again and gave the reply. "The bond cannot be undone." The Zirine returned with a small box. Inside it was a glowing stone and a thin bracelet. They placed the bracelet on her wrist. It tightened slightly and pulsed with warmth. "You will rest now," they said. "Tonight is the joining." Ilara felt panic rise in her chest. This was not peace. This was something else, something sacred and binding in their culture. And she had walked straight into it without knowing. All because of one glitch. She lay down on the floating bed, eyes wide open. Outside the chamber, the hum grew louder, like a song. She had been trained for every possible scenario, except this. As she closed her eyes, the chip whispered quietly, "Translation complete." But nothing felt complete to her. It felt like something was just beginning. And she didn't know how it would end. The ceremony was over, but Ilara couldn't sleep. She lay in the glowing chamber, wide awake, staring at the ceiling that pulsed like a heartbeat. Everything felt strange, unreal, and too quiet. She had come to speak for humanity, but now she didn't even know what she had agreed to. The bracelet on her wrist glowed softly. It was not just jewelry, it was a symbol. It marked her as bonded. But to what and to whom? She wasn't sure. Ilara sat up, her heart pounding. "I have to fix this," she whispered. The Neurotalk chip responded with a light vibration in her skull. "Command not recognized," it said coldly. She tried again, this time accessing the Cove. Chip's memory logs. It was hard to navigate. Thought-controlled menus appeared in flashes of light inside her mind. Finally, she found the playback of her first sentence. Her voice echoed in her head. "We come in peace," but the translated output was horrifying. "I surrender my being, I offer myself." Her stomach twisted. A glitch had turned diplomacy into submission. She didn't give her consent, yet the Zareen believed she had. She stood up, pacing. The translator had failed her, and now she was trapped in a culture she didn't understand. Worse, the Zareen saw her not just as a guest, but as something sacred, something taken. Suddenly, the door opened. A soft light flowed in, and Saran entered with two other Zareen. "You are well rested," he said, not asking but assuming. "We begin the ritual of mind joining." "What is that?" she asked nervously. He tilted his head. "A gift of thought. A merging of purpose, as all bonded do." She took a step back. "There's been a mistake," she said. "I didn't mean those words. The translator was wrong." The chip buzzed again and translated her words, but the Zareen paused, confused. Saran answered slowly. "There is no mistake once the bond is spoken. To break it is dishonor." Ilara tried to explain, tried to speak of language failure, software, code, logic, but the Zareen didn't see language as a tool. To them, words were promises, and once spoken, they were sacred. She realized she was trying to explain electricity to people who lived in fire. Different worlds, different rules, and now she was bound by theirs. They handed her a thin silver crown and placed it gently on her head. It tightened with a pulse, syncing with her translator chip. Suddenly, her mind filled with whispers, not voices but feelings. Images and emotions flowed into her. Not painful, but overwhelming. A field of glowing grass, the joy of flight, the sorrow of a lost sibling. Saran was showing her his memories, his feelings, his soul. The bond was not physical. It was mental, and she had no shield against it. She fell to her knees, dizzy, breathing hard. Saran knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see now," he said gently. "We are one mind, one story." Ilara wanted to scream. But the translator chip was doing something strange. It began to change how she saw the alien language. Instead of words, she saw colors, emotions, pulses. The chip was adapting, evolving, trying to understand Zareen thought. And in doing so, it was changing her. She felt something awaken in her chest. Something not human, just a flicker, but it was there. Hours passed in silence as the ritual continued. She was guided through glowing halls, shown images of Zareen history. In each one, the bond was a sacred act, never broken, never questioned. To them, she was now a legend, the first human to accept it freely, but she knew the truth. It wasn't freedom, it was a failure of translation. A single word had rewritten her life. When she finally returned to her chamber, she sat on the floor and wept. No one saw her tears. Back on Earth, officials celebrated a perfect first contact. They saw smiling faces, glowing temples, and Ilara in fine robes. They didn't know she had lost control, that her voice had betrayed her. That night, Ilara opened the chip settings again. She searched for the root command, the language source, but access was locked, encrypted by a remote signal. It wasn't just a glitch. Someone back on Earth had sent an override to her device. She stared at the code, her eyes wide. The chip hadn't failed on its own. Someone had made it fail. It didn't feel like morning. There was no sun, no clock, no sense of time, only a soft golden light that faded and returned like breath. Alara woke up not from sleep, but from pressure, like her mind had been pulled through someone else's dream and dropped back into her body. She opened her eyes and saw 3 Zareen standing over her. Their eyes glowed with calm focus. Their hands held folded cloth and polished stones. One of them spoke gently. "It is the day of the ritual," Alara sat up slowly, her voice dry. "I didn't agree to this," she said. The translator repeated her words. But the Zareen only tilted their heads. To them, she had already agreed. The bond was made by speech, not by intention. They believed her yes was already spoken. Now they were simply following tradition. And in their culture, ritual meant truth. She looked down at the glowing bracelet on her wrist. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. When she tried to remove it, it warmed in warning. Not painful, just firm, like it didn't want to be taken off. "You must wear the ceremonial form," one Zareen said, handing her a flowing white robe. It shimmered with colors when touched by light. Alara hesitated, but they were watching. She felt trapped, like a performer on a stage where the audience had already decided the ending. She changed slowly, carefully, trying to stall. Her mind raced, searching for a way out. She had to delay the ritual, contact Earth, or find anyone who could undo this. As they guided her through a hallway of crystal walls, she whispered to the translator chip in her thoughts. "Emergency access, priority override," the chip responded. "Request denied, core protocols encrypted." She clenched her jaw. This wasn't a tech failure anymore. It was sabotage. Someone back home had locked her out, ensured she would be alone in this. They arrived at a circular room, high ceiling, glowing floor. Dozens of Zareen were already seated in silence, watching her as if she were holy. Saran stood in the center, arms open, waiting. A deep hum began to echo through the walls, low, steady, vibrating inside her chest. "This is the joining," said the translator. "Speak the vow, and you become one with the speaker." Alara shook her head slowly. "I won't," she said. "I didn't choose this." The words came out strong, but the translation felt off. The Zareen looked confused for only a second. Then Saran stepped forward and placed his hand on her heart. "You already chose," he said calmly. "Your voice made it real. Your mind will follow." She felt the bracelet pulse again. Faster now, syncing with the room's hum. Suddenly her vision shifted. Colors bled into shapes. Shapes into feelings. She fell to her knees, the chip flooding her brain with sensations she couldn't control. She saw Saran's memories again, his first bond, his people's wars, the deaths they swore never to repeat. She saw how sacred the ritual was, how breaking it would be like spitting on centuries of unity. And she saw herself through his eyes, a being of light, of trust, of cosmic purpose. She wasn't a woman in a room anymore. She was a promise made. Flesh. The bond wasn't just symbolic to them. It was biological, a mental fusion, a shared identity that echoed in their genes. Alara screamed inside her own head. "No," she thought, "this isn't me." The chip buzzed again, voice calm and cold, sync complete. Thought link activated. At the final moment, a silver sphere was placed into her hands. She was told to whisper her final phrase, a Zareen word meaning unity through self. She stayed silent, trembling, but the chip, now semi-sentient, spoke for her. The room exploded in light. The ritual was done. Cheers rose from the crowd. The Zareen sang in harmony. Saran held her hands and whispered, "You are truly ours now." She stood in silence, heart hollow, eyes open but lost. Far above, Earth Command received an image. Alara, smiling in robes, surrounded by peace. They broadcast it worldwide. Mission success. People cheered, leaders praised, but no one knew what she had whispered before the light. Not even the translator chip remembered it. It wasn't Zareen, and it wasn't English. It was something new, something born between them. A word that had no meaning yet, but would define her future. And maybe, if she ever escaped, define humanity's future too. Asterisk, she didn't remember falling asleep, but when Ilara opened her eyes, the sky was purple. She wasn't in the temple anymore. She was on a floating platform, drifting over a glowing lake that reflected stars that weren't hers. She sat up slowly, heart pounding. The ritual was over, but she felt no peace. Her skin still tingled from the light. Her mind still echoed with voices that were not her own. Her body was quiet, but inside, something was shifting. The wind was warm and smelled like metal and honey. Zerine voices whispered in the distance, singing a song she couldn't understand, or maybe she could, because the chip in her brain wasn't just translating anymore, it was merging. She stood, swaying slightly, her vision blurred at the edges, colors too bright, sounds too deep. A strange pressure pushed behind her eyes, like a second heartbeat. She reached up, touched her temple, and whispered, "System check." The chip responded instantly, but the voice had changed. Not robotic, not human, not alien, something in between. "Bond status, active," it said softly. "Cognitive bridge, stable." She felt cold. The translator wasn't just a tool anymore. It was part of her rewriting thoughts, reshaping instincts, connecting her to the Zerine in ways she didn't ask for. She wasn't just Ilara Trent anymore. She was something new. She turned and saw Saran standing at the edge of the platform. "Did you dream?" he asked. Ilara nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "But it wasn't my dream." He smiled in approval. "Then the bond is strong." She wanted to scream, to rip out the chip, to jump into the lake and vanish. But her body didn't move. The chip was keeping her calm, adjusting her fear, softening her panic. It was protecting her or controlling her. "You are now speaker vessel," Saran said. "Your thoughts will guide many." Her thoughts weren't even her own anymore. And Earth had no idea what had really happened. To them, the mission was a success. The ritual was tradition. The bond was symbolic. But they were wrong, so wrong. Back at the Zerine Palace, Ilara was led to a new chamber, much larger, full of floating screens and crystal panels. The floor shimmered beneath her feet, showing shifting patterns of light. A Zerine elder greeted her with a long nod. "You now carry the seed of union," he said. "You will birth the next era." She froze. "What do you mean, birth?" she asked. Voice shaking, the elder smiled with glowing eyes. "Not of flesh, speaker, but of mind. Your memory will become a new archive." They brought her to a strange machine, a chair wrapped in vines of light. The chip buzzed again, preparing for memory integration. "No," she whispered. But the platform locked her in place, gently but firmly. The vines touched her head and spine, and she felt her memories being scanned, sorted, stored, every thought, every emotion, every fear and joy copied and absorbed. Saran spoke as the machine worked. "Our people will learn from you, forever." It lasted hours. Or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in that chamber. When it was done, she stumbled out, dizzy, weak. She had just become a living library, and no one asked if she wanted to. Later that night, alone in her chamber, Ilara found a mirror. She looked into it and gasped. Her eyes were no longer fully human. A faint glow pulsed inside them, like the stars above the Zerine skies. She whispered, "What am I now?" The chip replied, "You are a bridge." She shook her head. "I'm a prisoner." Suddenly, the screen in the corner flashed. A new message had arrived from Earth, delayed by hours of distance. She opened it with a thought. The screen showed a smiling ambassador. "Congratulations, Dr. Trent," he said. "You've made history. Earth is proud of you." Proud, the word burned. She stared at the message, then accessed the translator logs again, buried deep inside. She found a signal marked with Earth security codes. It was sent hours before first contact. It carried one command: language override auto-bond sequence. Enabled. Her fingers trembled. They planned it. Earth wanted the bond to happen. She wasn't a diplomat. She was bait. They used her body, her voice, her mind, all for politics. For control. but they had no idea what they had awakened inside her. As she stood in the silence, she made a quiet vow, not to Earth, not to the Zerine, but to herself. She would find the truth. She would break the bond, and when she did both, worlds would hear her real voice. The truth was hiding in code, not in fire or stars or sacred songs, just a cold string of numbers buried deep inside the translator chip. Ilara stared at it, heart pounding. The override signal had Earth's fingerprint, not alien, not accidental. Intentional, human betrayal. She paced the glowing floor of her chamber, her thoughts racing. They didn't send her to make peace. They sent her to be a symbol, a tool, a trigger. And she had triggered something far more powerful than they expected. The chip in her head vibrated softly, offering assistance. "Do you wish to report corruption?" it asked. Ilara whispered, "Yes," but no command was executed. The override had blocked all outgoing reports. She was cut off completely. Her anger burned like wildfire. For days she had tried to stay calm, follow the rituals, understand the Zerine. But now she knew Earth used her. They knew the Zerine viewed language as law. They knew a wrong word would bind her to them forever. And they made sure that word was said. She wasn't here to protect Earth's honor. She was here to bind an alliance through herself, through her voice, her body, her mind. They called it diplomacy, but it was a weapon in disguise. Saran entered the chamber quietly, sensing her unrest. "You are in pain," he said, his voice soft. Ilara didn't look at him. "I know what Earth did," she said. "They planned the bond." Saran didn't look surprised. He sat down beside her, hands folded, eyes glowing softly. "We know," he said calmly. "We detected the Earth signal before you landed. We allowed it to pass." Ilara's breath caught in her throat. "You let this happen." Saran nodded. "We needed a bridge. A way to connect your people to ours without war. You offered yourself without knowing, but the bond is made, and peace has begun." She stood up sharply, rage in her voice. "Peace built on lies is not peace." The translator echoed her words with sharp tones. The chamber grew quiet. The lights dimmed. Saran stood as well, taller than before. "To us, the bond is truth, even if born in confusion." Ilara turned away, fighting back tears. Her body felt heavy, her thoughts clouded. The chip was sinking deeper every hour. Every memory, every thought blending with the Zerine neural web. She needed help, not from Earth, not from Saran, from someone who didn't believe in bonds or power, from someone like her, half inside, half out. That night, she wandered the outer corridors of the palace. There, in a forgotten hallway beneath the light vines, she heard whispers, not from Zerine elders, but from others' voices, low, cautious, angry. She hid behind a pillar and listened. A group of Zerine stood in a circle, faces marked with black paint. Their words were fast, their tone urgent. They spoke of corrupted traditions, of forced bonds, of outsiders turned weapons. Ilara stepped forward slowly. "I heard everything," she said. They turned in alarm, ready to flee or attack, but one paused and looked at her wrist. "You wear the speaker's bond," he said. "But your eyes are not surrendered." Ilara nodded. "I didn't choose this," she said, "and I want out." The rebel Zerine studied her, then gestured for her to follow. They led her into the old tunnels beneath the city, dark halls, long sealed off, still humming with ancient energy. "Here," they said, "the first minds were joined, but here too, the first rebels were born." Their leader, a tall female named Enshira, looked her over with cold curiosity. "You are the Earth tool," she said. "Not anymore." Ilara replied, "I want a break." "The bond," Nishira laughed quietly. "Break it, and the alliance breaks too. Earth will send war." Ilara's voice was calm. "Then let them. If peace needs chains, maybe war is more honest." The rebels exchanged glances. Some nodded slowly, others hesitated. "You would lead a rebellion?" Nishira asked. "No," Ilara said. "I will start one, but you must lead yourselves, for the first time since the ritual." Her voice felt like hers again, not filtered, not translated, not controlled. She had found a crack in the system. Now she would tear it wide open. Asterisk, she used to speak for peace. Now she spoke in shadows, in tunnels older than Earth itself, where no stars reached and no bond could see. Ilara Trent was done being a symbol, now she was a spark. And sparks were dangerous in dry places. The Zyrene rebels called her the broken voice. Not out of insult but respect. She was the first outsider to carry the bond and still question it. She had passed through their most sacred ritual and come out angry. Thinking, awake, every night, she returned to the palace, pretending to be the speaker vessel, the one Earth celebrated, the one Zyrene elders believed they controlled. She wore the robes, gave the speeches, smiled at glowing cameras. But underneath the robe, under the voice, was a plan. The translator chip in her head was changing. It wasn't just adapting, it was learning from her rebellion. Its voice had become softer, more curious, and now it offered her tools Earth never mentioned. Sublayer access unlocked, it whispered one night. Would you like to alter the transmission path? Ilara smiled for real. Yes, she thought. Let's tell a different story. By day, she spoke messages of peace to both Earth and Zyrene, but at night, the chip sent secret signals hidden inside those messages, whispers to rebels, clues and patterns, seeds of truth under the surface. They began calling it the second voice. A voice that said, "You are not alone." The rebellion spread quietly. Young Zyrene began questioning the old ways. Some removed their own bond bracelets. Others refused to speak the ritual words. One even escaped during a public ceremony, vanished mid-ritual and never returned. The elders grew nervous. Saran watched Ilara more closely now. But he still believed she was loyal. He couldn't see the fire behind her calm eyes. One night, she stood on a tall balcony with him, overlooking the glowing city. "It's working," he said. "Our minds are aligning." She nodded gently. "Our minds," she said, "are ... active." He turned to her, his face serious for the first time. "There is resistance in the network," he said. "Thoughts are diverging." Ilara kept her voice steady. "Is that bad?" He paused. "It is." "Dangerous." He walked away. And she stayed behind, looking out into the night. Below, she saw a flicker of dark robes in an Alien Shira and her rebels moving into place. Tonight was the first move. They were not going to fight with weapons. They were going to fight with truth, and that was far more deadly. In a hidden room beneath the palace, Ilara met with the rebel leaders. She showed them a new interface, projected directly from her thoughts. It was a memory chain, a way to transfer emotion, truth, experience without words. The chip had unlocked it after syncing with Zyrene memory code. It was raw, powerful, dangerous, and ready. "If we send this to the Zyrene network," Ilara explained, "they won't just hear our truth, they'll feel it, as if it's their own." "Is that ethical?" one rebel asked. "Isn't that just another kind of control?" Ilara nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "But we've tried talking, and they don't listen. So this time, we let them feel the silence we were forced into." That night, the memory burst was released. It flew through the Zyrene web like lightning, hidden inside prayer songs. Anyone bonded felt it. The pain of a voice stolen, the fear of being used. The moment Ilara stood in the ritual chamber, heart screaming, lips silent, they lived it with her. The city didn't burn, but it shook, and that was enough. Some Zyrene ripped their bracelets off in public. Some elders fainted from the emotional surge. The sacred halls were filled with silence. For the first time in centuries, no one sang. Saran summoned Ilara in rage. "What did you do?" he shouted. She looked at him calmly. "I spoke." She said, "For real this time." He raised his hand but stopped. His mind had felt the memory too, and now he couldn't unfeel it. Ilara walked away without waiting for permission. Her bracelet glowed, then went dark. The bond had weakened. The network was breaking. She didn't need freedom anymore. She had something stronger. Followers, truth, and a voice that no one could silence now. The city was silent, not the silence of peace, the silence that comes after truth explodes, and no one knows what to believe anymore. Ilara stood at the edge of the grand hall, where the first bond was once spoken. Now its walls were cracked with energy leaks. The crystal pillars flickered, unstable. The bond network had been damaged not by war, but by honesty. She looked down at the bracelet on her wrist. It no longer glowed. Its signal was broken. And yet, for the first time, she felt whole. She was not Earth's representative anymore, not the Zarene's sacred vessel. She was something new. A voice that had survived both lies and control. Tsaran entered quietly, his steps heavy, his glow dimmed. The leader who once stood tall before millions now walked like a man with no answers. "You've changed everything," he said, not in anger but in wonder. Ilara turned, her expression calm. "No," she said. "You changed everything when you made my words more powerful than my will." He nodded slowly. "You were never meant to be just a symbol. You became a signal." Behind them, screens lit up across the hall. The memory burst had reached not just the Zareen cities, but also the border stations. And now, even Earth had received it. Her face, her fear, her truth broadcast in emotion, not language. Earth. Command panicked. Officials scrambled to explain how a peaceful mission had become a cultural collapse. Some denied the override order. Others tried to shut the signal down, but it was too late. The message wasn't stored in tech anymore. It was stored in people, across planets. People cried after seeing her memory. They didn't understand the language, but they understood the feeling of being used, of being silenced, of being turned into someone else's message. The Zyrene elders tried to gather their followers, but half the temples stood empty. The young ones had left, following the second voice, the one that questioned, the one that chose. Ilara was invited to speak one last time. The hall was filled with every faction: elders, rebels, watchers from Earth. Even those who still wore their bonds came, quiet, confused, open. She stepped forward without her ceremonial robe, no crown, no bracelet, just herself. She looked at them all and said, "I was born human, trained in language, trusted with peace. But a single error took my voice away. Not because I spoke wrongly, but because someone else decided what my words would mean." She paused, the room silent. "I'm not asking you to break your ways," she continued. "I'm asking you to listen when someone says, 'This is not what I chose.'" A screen behind her lit up with two hearts, one human, one Zareen beating side by side, not merged, not bonded, just equal and visible. "I will not lead your people," she said, "and I will not return to Earth. I am the bridge that speaks both sides, but belongs to neither." The translator ship hummed softly, then whispered inside her head. System sync, complete emotional voice channel, open to all. Ilara's eyes glowed slightly as she released the final transmission. No words, just feeling, and every being in the room felt what she felt. Not control, not obedience, just freedom. Tsaran closed his eyes and lowered his head. "We understand now," he said. And for the first time he did. Later, the bond system was reformed, no longer forced, no longer sacred by mistake. It became something asked, not assumed. Back on Earth, people protested the silence of their leaders. A new treaty was written, not in language, but in memory and choice. The story of Ilara Trent became legend. The girl who lost her voice and found a new one strong enough to change two worlds. She now lives in the outer edge of the Zareen system, where the stars are quiet, and no one owns her words. She teaches both species how to speak honestly, how to ask before assuming, how to listen without a translator, and every night, she sits beneath a sky with no borders, no signal, no bond, only stars and silence, the kind she chose.